I started this project by checking out this yarn and seeing what I could do with it. It was easy to work with and I liked the colors. It came in a pack of 300-gram skeins and it is an ombre 100% acrylic variegated yarn. I don't like synthetic fibers for clothing, so I never bought any acrylic yarns before, but I do have some in my stash that was passed to me a long time ago. Since these 300 grams of yarn won't be enough for the whole sweater, I may have to use those too. For now, I'm just making motifs and testing the yarn. What you see me doing now is crocheting a leaf with Tunisian crochet, sped up 3 times. I started with a chain circle with 1 row of single crochets and then starting Tunisian crochets around the circle, gradually increasing stitches on the circle side until I make it all around the circle. Then I finish the edge with slip stitches and crochet a little stem at the end, which is just a few chains with a single crochet through them. If you would like to learn how to do this, search for Tunisian crochet leaf and you will find several videos that show you how to do this in detail. The second part of this video is recorded in time-lapse. I wish I could work this fast. This is another time-lapse where I make another such leaf. The color of this yarn is called tiramisu and it just had perfect brown shades for autumn leaves. Since the work is so repetitive, let's keep to the end. Finishing the leaf with a small stem and it's done. I'm going to make another leaf, but a little different this time. I'm starting with a stem, which is in this case a double chain or half I-cord. I start with a slip knot and a longer tail end, then make a yarn under with the tail end and a yarn over with the normal strand and then pull through. Repeat several times to complete the stem. Then I'm leaving crochet hook behind and switching to circular knitting needles. I'm using whatever is left of tail end to cast on 2 more stitches so that I have something to work with. With the 3 stitches now on the needle, I turn the work over and purl 1 row. For the next row, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and knit the last one. Next row is purl the 5 stitches. Then increase again in the next row. Knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit the last 2. I'm going to repeat this pattern until I'm happy with the width of the leaf, and from then on I will reduce at the beginning and at the end of each knit row. I reduce by slip slip knit on the first 2 stitches, knit the rest of the row until the last 2 stitches and knit those 2 together. And that's all there is to it. Once the leaf is done, I cut the yarn, then use a needle to tuck in the tail end of the yarn. And here's the finished knit leaf. To make the edges look better, I went around with a hook and crocheted the border, slip stitch, chain, and repeated that all around. I crocheted a few more leaves. Some of them I made up, and some of them I made after a pattern or crochet along YouTube videos. I believe the leaf I'm showing was made after this video. Yes, it is in Russian. I have to admit that I'm not very good at following crochet instructions or charts in English. The abbreviations are quite confusing for me, and I much prefer the graphic charts. I've learned crochet as a young child in Serbian from magazines and books translated to Serbian or still in German. And these days, if I want to crochet something, I searched for Russian videos by typing listik kryuchkom, which means crochet leaf. I can find many great crochet videos and easily follow the instructions, even though I don't really speak Russian. Anyways, here's a finished Tunisian crochet leaf. It is a bit stiff and wants to curl up. This leaf has been steam ironed and drapes much better. There really is a big difference in texture and flexibility before and after pressing. The last leaf I will show here hasn't been pressed yet. I made it following the chart from Russian crochet magazine Duplet. It is a fantastic resource of crochet patterns for anyone who knows how to read graphic charts. Scanned pages can be found on Pinterest and Russian websites. Easiest way to find it is with the Yandex image search with the search phrase Duplet Kryuchkom. As you click on pictures you like, you will get more similar ones. To spice things up a bit, I decided to include different types of yarn. The one I'm using now is likely cotton and is more akin to a crochet thread. My general plan is to crochet a bunch of smaller motifs and then crochet in between them, similar to Irish lace, except that it isn't going to be a net but more of a dense crochet. The motifs made with fine yarn may have to be sewn on top because it will be difficult to crochet through them. With a thick hook I'll be using for in between, which will be done with a thick acrylic yarn like that purple and white seen in the background. I'm now crocheting a second row on top of the first one, made up of double crochets. This row is slip stitch and chain, where each slip stitch is made through the front half loop of double crochets from previous row and isn't increasing the size of motif, only adding a decorative circle. The third row is made of 2 double crochets made through each back half loop of double crochets from the first row. The row is finished with a slip stitch. As the last row, I do a round of reverse single crochets, which is done backwards, and again I do it in the back half loop of the double crochets from the previous round. The reason for that is to get a nice circle made up of front halves of the loops that are left untouched. That little circle is now finished. I think I would like to embellish it a little. I take a piece of yarn and thread the needle with it and then weave it through the front half loops of the last double crochet row. After that is done, I tuck the tail end of the yarn and do the same with the tail end of the brown yarn. Trimming off the excess yarn. And I have a smaller needle ready with aramid thread. I am sewing a larger silver bead in the middle of the circle. And that's it for this motif. As you can see in the background, I've made quite a few circles. They're crocheted pretty much the same way as the brown one we've just seen, except for the spirals, but I'll show those in a bit. Here I'm sewing on some beads onto the white circle with 2 strands of aramid thread, and since this thread is so strong, I'm not compelled to sew through the beads twice, as I would normally do with cotton thread. Skipping to the end of adding beads, here is what the final result looks like, and then we look at the rest of the circles that are completed. These last 2 are missing the beads. I am weaving a white yarn on purple circle, but in this case it doesn't make much of an impact because of the purple-white colors of the yarn the circle is made of. In the middle, I am adding a large bead, this time a frosted round glass bead. Now let's see how the spiral is done. I start with few chains that are connected via slip stitch into a loop. Then I make a couple of single crochets through the loop. Maybe a half double crochet. And I continue with double crochets until I reach halfway through the loop. Then it's time to switch to another yarn. I picked white. I make the first loop with it, then begin crocheting around the same loop where the purple yarn had the last double crochet. The process is the same with white yarn as well. First, I make a few single crochets, half double crochet, and continue on with double crochets until I reach the beginning of the row. Then I continue crocheting double crochets right through the purple single crochets of the first row. Sometimes I will make 2 double crochets in same crochet or double crochet from the previous row, because increasing the stitches is necessary as the circle expands. I don't follow any specific chart when I'm making these, rather, years of experience crocheting allowed me to develop a bit of intuition, and I can wing it without too much thinking, and it usually doesn't end up being off. Of course, sometimes I will need to undo a row or part of it. As you can see, I am now back to working with purple yarn again. These alternations continue until I reach the size I want, and I finish each color with stitches that are shorter. So going from double crochets, I do half double, then single, and finish with slip stitch. Skipping forward, the spiral is done and I'm going to tuck in the tail ends with needle. And here it is. The next step is to sew some beads, but let's skip that and see another way I have been adding some interest to these simple circle motifs. I took a crochet thread of different color and I'm making a simple chain stitch through the double crochets. This is exactly the same thing as tambour embroidery, except that tambour embroidery is done through fabric and requires a special needle hook. Let's get that done real quick. Finishing the last stitch with a needle and tucking in the thread. And here it is, done. I recorded some more footage of making more of these circles, like the one you see me doing now with wool yarn. But since I'm not showing anything new, let's skip ahead to where I'm making a pattern for the sweater. I am making this sweater for my daughter, who is almost 10, and I'm starting with her hoodie, which she likes to wear a lot, and it needs the wash. Its size is 10 to 12. I want to make a pattern a little bigger so that she doesn't grow out of it too soon. I am using 2 ironed paper grocery bags, which I have taped together with a yellow masking tape. I drew a center line with a quilting ruler, then traced the half sleeve outline with some offset to get a little longer and a little wider sleeve. Then I'm doing the same with front and back. It will be the same pattern, except that front will have a little bigger neck opening. Again, I drew a center line and only drawing one side of the pattern, the other side will be mirrored from the cutout. I'm also making the sweater longer and widening towards the bottom instead of having a ribbed hem as the hoodie has. Last part is the hood, and I place the hoodie onto the available space of the paper and trace it. Now's the time to do some cutting. I'm using a ruler to make a crease along the center line so that I can fold the paper more accurately. I then cut first half of the sleeve and fold it over, then cut the other side. Then repeat for front/back. But first, I need to make sure that wider sleeve will fit, so I use sleeve pattern to adjust the curve where sleeve will attach. I'm also adjusting the side curve a bit to follow the curves of the body somewhat, checking the sleeve again and finally cutting. Folded the paper over and cutting the other side. And the bottom edge needs to be curved a little so that the joint corners of front and back pieces don't stick out. With the pattern out of the way, I can move on to the next phase. I'm going to knit the cuffs for the sleeves. And you can see in top left corner there is a finished one. It is very basic. I cast on some stitches, around 25, and then just knit both ways. If I were to purl going back, the cuff would be curling up, but this way it stays flat just like a ribbed cuff. This yarn is my favorite, but as I said, it was passed to me a long time ago. I already used most of that purple one. I knitted a poncho for my girl when she was a few years old, and I'm left with a pack of 3 of these yellow, orange, pink shade acrylic yarns. It's Lion brand homespun yarn. Yeah, right. Homespun is just a wholesome sounding name to get us to accept using synthetic, essentially plastic yarns instead of wool, cotton, linen, and cashmere. Yikes. Anyway, I should use up most of this yarn and be done with it. Then I can move on to the wool and cotton yarns that I've accumulated over the years. And now that I've knitted the same number of rows as the first cuff, I'm casting the stitches off. Casting off is now completed. Cutting off the yarn, and let's see what we have here. This yarn is variegated. It started as more saturated yellow and continued as more of a pale yellow, so the cuffs do look different. At this point, I'm ready to start pinning the pieces down. I will use 2 of the 4 foam slabs that my 3D printer was protected with during shipping. Interestingly, when I've done this kind of work before, I used foam slabs that my first 3D printer came with, but these are much bigger. Pretty much the whole sleeve fits on one foam slab. The other one is below it so that the pins don't scratch the table, because they will stick out just a little bit. For this sleeve, I will use the knit leaves, and I'm placing everything face down because I want to crochet through the back side of the motifs for a better looking joining. I'm inserting 4 to 6 pins in every motif that is placed. And I add a few small motifs to fill up the space. Finally, it is time to start connecting everything together by crocheting in between. I was using 6mm hook for crocheting all the pieces, but I'm switching to a 5mm hook because I need to run it through parts of the motifs that might be tighter than the top loop of the crochets that I was running the hook through before. At the beginning of in-between crocheting, I didn't have much of a strategy. I figured that this yarn doesn't show different stitches all that well due to its texture, so I wasn't too concerned if the right or wrong side stitches would be seen on the right side of the sleeve. Since there's nothing going on the left side of the video, let me use up that space to show the hooded poncho I made back in February of 2020 while my hands continue to work on the right side. I really had a lot of fun with that one. I experimented with different freeform crochet styles using yarn I heisted from my mom's stash the year before. I incorporated some pony beads and various flower and leaf motifs, and I've made beaded trim all around the edges. I wrapped the motifs around the edges of the hood and made it as one piece without having to stitch the seam, for there was none. Beaded trim was just another motif through which I crocheted in between. After it was all connected and filled in, I simply cast on stitches around the edges and continued knitting, increasing stitches as I went along. This poncho was a hit, and my daughter has been wearing it for years. Now that it is getting a little too short, she's getting this sweater to wear instead. For this next part, I'll stay quiet. It is a time-lapse footage sped up 3 more times and is kind of fun to watch, so please enjoy. Alright, one sleeve is finished, one more to go. I am pulling out the pins to take it off. As you saw, I started from the cuffs upwards, and only later did I begin doing Tunisian crochet for filling in, seen going around the spiral piece in brown yarn. Filling in different yarns made for an interesting weaving pattern. Pressing the sleeve with a steaming iron helps it relax and drape better. And chugging along, I continue with the next sleeve, placing motifs face down and pinning them to the paper pattern on top of foam slabs. Here and there I had to reshuffle the pieces to create a better placement, keeping in mind that I need enough spacing around each piece to crochet in between. It took me about 2 days to crochet all of the in-betweens for each sleeve. I didn't record working on the second sleeve because there wasn't much new to show. Here it is, finished. On this sleeve I've done much more of Tunisian crochet and it looks better than just single crochets back and forth. It also has a nice flow and texture, and it is in many ways easier to do since there are no back and forth rows per se. Here I'm working my way around the large maple leaf. These larger foam slabs are not as convenient to turn around, especially if the work table is full of yarn, pins, and hooks. That is why I move around to work at the comfortable angle. And once front is completed, I steam it and very lightly press it to set it in place and avoid shrinkage. Then I remove the pins and flip the piece over to see how it turned out. I tried something new here. This little angular swirl was made similar to round spiral motifs in that I worked with two different yarns, switching back and forth. I would crochet a chain and pin it to the edge of the pattern. Then I made a single crochets through it and worked inwards to get the labyrinth style section. While I was working on the back, I spiced things up a bit with some knitting. I cast on the stitches with the hook, then transferred them to the circular knitting needles and knitted several rows. I already have a few sections that were done this way, but the one I'm showing is knit both ways, while the others were knit in purl. When there were enough rows to make a bridge to the gray spiral, I cast off the stitches. I then switched back to the hook to make the connection. You see me switching to a green hook, which is only 2.25 millimeters, and it went through gray spiral easily, while the blue 5mm hook had a hard time going through. I still wanted to crochet with the blue one to prevent the stitches from getting too tight. After crocheting on the side of knit section, I am casting on more stitches, but not for knitting though. I pull yarn through in pairs, so it's a continuation of Tunisian stitches on top of which I worked. Before speeding up this clip, there is one thing I wanted to show in real time, and that is how I went about making single crochets in such a way that they look like they're on the wrong side or equivalent to purling, as I'm working on the wrong side of the back piece. I figured out that the connection to the previous row is what makes the stitch look like it's either right or wrong side. So if I run the yarn in front of the hook instead of behind it while pulling the yarn through the crochets of the previous row, they will look like they're purled or look like purl on the wrong side and consequently knit on the right side, which is what I want. Otherwise, one row would look like knit, the other like purl, but equivalent of that in crochet, where knit is right side and purl is wrong side. It might be a bit confusing, and if my explanation isn't clear, just please watch what I'm doing. As you can see, the single crochets I'm making right now are in this purl row, so yarn is in front of the hook and pulled out differently. Okay, let's move on, and I'll demonstrate this in another recording from better angle and different yarn to make it clear how it's done and what the differences are. Alright, so I'm finishing this row with single crochets, and I do it as I normally would, with yarn over and pull through, and the last one like so. And then when I turn it around and do one chain stitch, I would do it this way like the previous row. However, that stitch looks right side on this side, which is the wrong side for the whole piece, and it looks wrong side on the right side. So instead of doing it like I did the previous row, what I need to do is invert it. So instead of going like this, what I need to do is instead, let's undo this one, let's do it from the back like so, pull the yarn through, and instead of doing yarn under, I'll actually do a yarn over and pull through, because I think that will help too, to make it look like purl on this side. So I'm getting the yarn through from the back like so, and then instead of yarn under, I do a yarn over, and it's not as easy to do, but it is doable. Here we go. One more time, getting the hook in from the back side and pulling the yarn through, and then doing under like so. And then if we look, this looks like it's on the right side, just what we wanted. And now if we want to do a double crochet, what I need to do, instead of putting yarn under and then pulling it out this way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the yarn over and then get it from the back side, pull the yarn through, and then let's try like this once and twice. One more time, yarn over, get it from the back side, pull through, yarn over, 1 and 2. One more time, yarn over, get it from the back side, 1 and 2. And now if we look, looks like these 2 double crochets were knit or crocheted on this side, but it was actually a return row, so that way we can get all the stitches looking on the right side as if we were doing a circular crochet. And we're back to the main project, and here is one part of the hood completed. It is a little different than the rest in that there were no motifs that I had to work around. However, the crochet still had to be pinned down to precisely match the pattern. Let's see how I went about making the hood. I start with several chains, then make a row of single crochets through them, 1 single crochet through each of the chains. At the end of the row, I made 6 more chains and a row of single crochets through those, making an L shape. I then make a single crochet through the last single crochet of the first chain and 1 more through the very first chain I started with. I then switch to the other yarn and make single crochets all around the L-shaped piece. Skipping forward, here I'm back to working with the brown yarn again, going around and making few more chains to branch out the pattern, which is starting to resemble a labyrinth or a maze. As I work around this concave corner, I need to decrease the stitches so that they don't bunch up and make a bulge in finished piece. Likewise, on the convex corners, I need to increase the stitches by making 3 single crochets through the corner stitch. The corners get more rounded with each additional row, however. Then, as I catch up with the end of the row made with orange yarn, I switch to that one and continue on. I am again making these single crochets only through the back half loop so that the front half loops form a nice line. And I'm making 3 single crochets through the corner stitch. Moving on, now that the piece is sufficiently large, it's time to pin it down. I did not cut the yarn and will continue where I left off. I sped up the video 30 times to make it more fun. And this half of the hood is now completed. There are quite a few tail ends of the yarn because once the crochet reaches the edge of the pattern, I can't crochet through that edge section and need to finish filling in wherever I'm at and then start with next piece of yarn and still unfinished part and finish that too. I will tuck in those tail ends before I sew the 2 halves together. And I also need to sew on the smaller circle motifs. This is how I went about it, working with the same aramid thread I used for attaching the beads. Once that is done, I'm ready to assemble the sweater. I make the seams first on the sleeves using baseball stitch. That way the seam blends in really well and it is practically invisible, especially when I can match the yarn color. And this is what I'm talking about. Seam? What seam? Where is it? And the sleeves are sewn just like with any other garment. Connected front and back pieces are turned inside out and the sleeve is inserted in through the sleeve opening, and then those edges are sewn together. I use the clips to keep the sleeve in place as I sew with the same baseball stitch again. I likewise sew together the 2 sides of the hood, but I am not attaching them to the sweater yet because I want to add a lining to the hood first. Before I move on to that, I crochet a simple trim around the hood to make the edges look more finished. I do the same on the bottom of the sweater with a few rows of simple single crochets made all around. Since I can't crochet around the hood, at least not before it is attached, I have to make the row going back, and I utilize the same pulling yarn from the back type of single crochets to make those stitches look like the first row. And that looks pretty good. I'm finishing the bottom trim of 3 single crochet rows made in back half loops. I'm doing this with a row of repeating slip stitch chain through each back half loop of single crochets from the third row. And that's it. These front half loops sure do make nice lines. I quickly checked to see if the sewn together hood with the border trim still matches the pattern, and looks like it does. I picked this pink cotton fabric since it looks like a good match for the sweater. I need to iron it first. I then fold the fabric so that the depth of the hood fits both layers, and I'm now ready to pin the pattern and cut the fabric. Next, I want to cut a strip that will be sewn around the edges of the hood and act as a channel for paracord hood string. And for that, I am trying for the first time this fancy slotted ruler which has slits at every ½ inch for quick cutting of the strips that doesn't require ruler repositioning and realignment. I first checked to see if the strip will be long enough for the hood, and yes, it will be. So I'm running rotary cutter through the slit and making a cut. The ruler actually has triangle markings for 2½ inch strips and circles for 1½ inch strips, but I didn't realize that at first, which is why I'm counting the slits to make an 1½ inch strip. And I still had to use regular quilting ruler and scissors to finish cutting the strips. I want the strips to be fortified with this lightweight fusible fleece because the grommets I will be installing for the string need something to hold on to. I am then punching the hole and installing grommets. I also want the whole hood to be lined with fusible fleece, so I press it on and cut around it. Here I am marking 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the hood because that's where I figured I should put the strip for sewing. And it would be folded over like this, making the first seam using this neat laser light as a guide. Also sewing the second strip, making sure that the grommets are on the bottom of the hood. After trimming off the excess pieces of the strip, I sew both sides of the hood together. I start to sew below the strip seam, otherwise I would sew through the string channel and wouldn't be able to run paracord through it. This next seam was the trickiest because here I had to sew through both the strip and the hood lining onto the crocheted hood. The stack was pretty thick and I used a heavy-duty polyester thread in long stitches and had to keep adjusting presser foot to stay on top of it. I was happy with how the seam turned out. but I had to rip the last centimeter or so because there was one more seam to make and I needed to fold in the lining and sew right by the fold. I am not sewing by the very edge of crochet because I still need to attach the hood to the sweater, and I will do that with baseball stitch and yarn. I need to tuck in all the fabric and seal the hood, so to speak. I secured the hood with the clips, making sure that it is centered, then proceeded to sew it to the sweater. Now I need to pick a paracord. Actually, why not ask my daughter? It's her sweater, so she can choose. And she picked this one. Good choice, I think. Looks good to me. I have these letter leaves and would like to attach them to the ends of the string, but looks like the holes are too small. I could punch bigger holes or figure out a different way to attach them. But first, let's get the string into the channel. I'm attaching a safety pin to help me run the string through. The end of the paracord has been melted with lighter flame to prevent fraying. And let's melt the other end. Nope, it still won't go through those holes. The letter leaves came with a nice letter string. Maybe I can use that. It looks cool, but how do I attach it? And voila, sweater is done. Trying it on for the first time. I ended up using safety pins because that way the leaves can be removed before washing the sweater. Since the sleeves are a little long, they can be rolled up. I'm happy that the sweater was well received. Let's look at it once more. This is after my daughter wore it at least half a dozen times. There's definitely some pilling going on. Oh well. That's it for this project. I hope the video was both inspiring and instructional. Your comments, likes, and subscribes are very much appreciated and will help the channel grow. Thanks for watching.